Okay, we are going to go over lesson 11, which goes along with comparing the size of fractions. We did this the other day when we did lesson 10, and you had to shade in, for example, the different fractions on these fraction bars, and then we did like this bottom section where you had to circle like 1/2 was greater than a third, because if you had a half of something, that means you had more of it than if you had a third of it. So lesson 11 goes over kind of the same thing, except instead of you just comparing two that they give you, you are going to have to actually create one that is greater or less than the one that they give you. We are going to be on page 41, but first I'm just going to show you a few examples just to kind of get your brain back in these comparing the fractions kind of mode. So I drew 3 circles on this paper, and so these were sort of similar to those fraction circles that I have magnetized, like stuck to the wall up there by the smartboard. So if you remember, when we did this, that was when I took those little fraction pieces, those little circles, and I gave somebody like the one that was 1/2, and then I gave somebody else the one that was like 1/8, and you guys had to tell me who had the biggest piece or which one would you rather have. So if you remember doing that, this one is the circle where it's divided into halves. So here's 1/2. Here's the other half. Let's get our unit fractions on there. And this one, since it's in fourths, these are all 1/4. And this one is in 1/8 pieces, so this is in eighths. So each one of these is 1/8. Again, these are just like the fraction circles that are stuck up there on the wall in the front of the classroom. Okay, so then just remember, if you're sharing something with somebody, so we use the example like these were pizzas or cakes or something. If you're sharing something with someone, if you slice it in half, if you slice the pizza in half, that is automatically going to mean that you are going to get a bigger piece than if you share the same size pizza with 4 people. If you have to share it with 2 people, okay, maybe this is like you and this is your dad or something, you're going to get a bigger piece because you're going to get all of this. Now, if 2 other people come over, now you have the same size pizza, except now it was like divided up again. So now you have it into 4 pieces. So since there's more pieces, the pieces are smaller. There you have more people to share, so each person gets less of it. So if you had your pizza like this, and you had to share it with maybe you and your mom and your dad and your sister, then you're each only going to get something that is this size. And when we compared them, then we said that means 1/2 is going to be greater than, remember he eats the bigger one, 1/4. And if you remember talking about this, the trickiest thing that people get stuck on is they see the 2 on the bottom for the denominator, and they see the 4, and they think, oh, well, 4 is a greater number than 2. But with fractions, it doesn't work that way. 4 think of it, this also means you've divided it up more. You have more people sharing it. 4 people are sharing it, versus this way, you only have 2 people sharing it. You'll probably get a lot. Same thing with the eighths. You don't want 1/8 of something. Unless it's something you hate, I guess. But you don't want 1/8 because, look, that's it. If this was something you really liked, the 1/8 is divided up more. So the more you divide it up, so the bigger the denominator. So right now, this denominator is the biggest out of all of the other ones. Whoa, that's a bad circle. The bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So the denominator is bigger, the fraction is going to be smaller because that means it's divided up more. Okay, so let's try this page 41 in your book. So the first one they did for you, so here's the sample, they have 1/4 here, like we just saw, and they said that is less than, so think, you have 1/4 of something. You took something and divided it into fourths. That's going to be smaller than what? Like if you wanted more than that, what would you do? Oh, you would take something and divide it only in half. Okay, so we're going to try this one right here. Number 1, this is 1/3. 1/3 is greater than, and then we need to choose something that would be greater than 1/3. So think. If you have 1/3, that means you shared it with 3 people. Okay, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try to draw a rectangle that's kind of the same size. If it's not, it doesn't matter. So 1/3 has to be bigger than something. Well, think, how are the fractions going to get smaller? That means this one has to be smaller. Well, 1/3 is going to be bigger than something that's divided up more than, this is only divided up 3 times. So that's going to be greater than something that's divided up, say, let's say 4 times. So we'll make this one fourths, and then I'm going to shade in 1. So now we have that 1/3 is greater than 1/4, because again, this time you get a piece this size. If you took this same thing and you divided it into fourths, the pieces are going to be smaller because you divided it up more. Okay, let's try the next one. Number 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here this is 1/5. 1/5 is less than something. So 1/5 is, I'm going to write smaller under here because sometimes I think it's easier to think of it as terms of the size of it. 1/5 is smaller than something. So you need something that's bigger. 1/5 is smaller than, so okay, remember, denominator is a 5. That means it's divided up 5 times. That's going to be smaller than that something that's divided up only maybe 2 times. So we'll do 1/2. Okay, 1/5 is less than or smaller than 1/2. Because again, it's smaller because you had to divide it with 5 people. You had to share with 5 people. Over here, you only had to share with 2. So 1/5 is going to be smaller. The more you divide it up, the smaller your piece is. Okay? Oh man, look at all these. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, 1/10. 1/10 is greater than something. So 1/10 is bigger than, so you shared it with 10 people, and that's going to be bigger than if you shared it with what? Let's see, 1/10 bigger than, how could you divide it so something would be smaller than the 10th? Because the 1/10 has to be bigger. Well, if you want a piece smaller than tenths, you do have to divide them up more. So 1/10 is going to be bigger, 1/10 is going to be greater than, let's say, 12. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was not wonderful, but we'll do 1/12. 1/10 is greater than 1/12. 1/10 is bigger because you only shared with 10 people. Okay? Ooh, look at all these. Each of these are in 4, so 4, 8, 12. 1/12. 1/12 is less than, well, probably almost anything, because look, 1/12 means you shared with 12 people, and you got that. Woohoo for you. Okay, 1/12 is going to be less or smaller than just about anything, because sharing with 12 people, that's sharing with a lot of people. So that's going to be less than, so something bigger than a 12th. So as long as you divide it, don't divide it up that much. So you're like, oh, I don't want a 12th. That's really small. I only want to share with maybe 3. Why would you rather share with 3? Because you get more. So 1/12 is going to be smaller or less than 1/3. Because again, you'd rather share with 3 people than 12 people. Okay, if you flip it over, there are 3 more over here. They're just reversed around. So this time you're filling in the blank right here. So I'm going to do number 5, and then I'm going to leave you on your own to try 6 and 7 and 8. 8 is kind of like the bonus one. Okay, so number 5, something is greater than, let's see how many there are on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is an 8th. Okay, something has to be bigger than 1/8. So remember, if it's bigger than an 1/8, it means it's divided up less. So there's less pieces. So you want a number that's less. So let's go with, it doesn't have to be the same shape. I'm going to make this one a circle. I'm going to go with 1/4 over here. 1/4 is greater, it's bigger than the 1/8. Why is 1/4 bigger than 1/8? Look at them. Even though they're different shapes, 1/4 is still going to be bigger than 1/8. Always, even though the shapes are different.